Good morning, it's today again. Welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I store 20% of my income in the form of rare coins and precious metals. Yesterday, we did talk a tiny bit about 40% silver, and while that video was a little bit of a joke, it was mostly a commentary on the fact that the subject is very neglected and disrespected. I personally really like 40% silver, so if you do want a true video about this topic, let me know and I'll circle back to it. But today, we're actually going to be talking about silver dollars. And we already went through the 40% ones, so we'll just skip those. Before I get into the video, I have to make a quick shout out to Emmanuel. Congratulations for getting the first comment on my last video. If y'all want to hear your name in my video, make sure you get to the comments first. And while you're down there, like the video and subscribe if you haven't. Before anyone gets too excited, no, we're not going to be talking about gold today. However, I did pick up this capsule for my Krugerrand yesterday. So we're just going to take a quick look at this beautiful Krugerrand outside of its capsule before we finally get it into one. And yes, I know the Krugerrand is 22 carats, so it doesn't technically need a capsule, but I just like the way the gold looks inside capsules, so that's how I keep mine. And of course, we'll stop to hear the sound of this plastic protection. I don't know why, but I just love the sound of this plastic squeezing around a coin. Anyway, let me know if you keep your gold in capsules, if it's only 24 karat that you do that with, or if you also keep your 22 karat, or really anything that you keep in capsules. Let me know what you choose to put in there and why. Let's finally get to the silver dollars. My silver dollar collection goes all the way back to the beginning of the Morgan dollars, which is 1878. To understand why these are so collectible, we have to take a few steps back, all the way to the beginning of coinage in the United States. In 1792, they defined how much silver was in the dollar. It is 371 and a quarter grains of silver. Originally, a $50 was exactly half of that, a quarter exactly a quarter, dime and half dimes respectively exact fractions of that many grains of silver. Eventually in 1837, they started to change the coinage. They actually went from an 89.24% alloy to a 90%. And they did the same with gold. It used to be 22 karat, and they solidified it at 90% so that the exchange rate between gold and silver was very defined. Eventually, they made bigger changes. In 1853, they actually lowered the amount of silver that made a dollar when using smaller denominations. However, the dollar stayed the same. So the $1 coin was still 371 and a quarter grains. As we moved forward, eventually in 1873, they decided to change the smaller coinage again. They defined it as 25 grams per dollar. And they said that they were going to stop making the silver dollar. That's actually when the United States went onto the gold standard and away from the silver standard. I'm going to show off this coin a little bit while I'm speaking. I firmly believe that this coin is a proof. It's an 1885, and it has a reflective field and a slightly frosted devices. Take a close look and let me know what you think in the comments. So, as I was saying, in 1873, they discontinued the silver dollar. However, they continued to make trade dollars. These trade dollars were sent to China and in the Oriental market and were actually made with more silver so that they could be competitive in that market compared to what circulated at the time, the Chinese trade dollar. I believe there was a French trade dollar and even the 8 reales, which was the basis of our dollar in the original Coinage Act of 1792. So many people dislike this decision to move American citizens away from the silver dollar while continuing to supply international markets with said silver dollar that people actually called this the crime of 1873. In fact, the original Wizard of Oz was actually based around this coinage act that took silver away from the hands of the Americans. In the book, Dorothy was originally wearing silver slippers as she walked on the golden brick road all the way to the greenhouse that represented the greenback system that the country was headed towards. Yes, people were talking about this in 1873. So what changed that birthed this Morgan dollar in 1878? Well, around that time, there was a huge mine found with silver ore. It was the first significant discovery of silver in the United States. It was actually found in Nevada. And this silver mine that was found actually birthed the idea of the Carson City Mint. At the same time, Germany also decided to step away from a silver standard similar to how the United States did. This lowering demand compounded with such a skyrocket in supply with the founding of this mine sent the silver price barreling downward, which actually caused a major depression in the United States for about 5 years. The decision was made to reintroduce the silver dollar to bring back demand for silver and possibly stabilize the price again. The surprising thing is that it actually worked. However, now American citizens had silver dollars again, so those who could afford to hold them did. That's why a lot of these ended up in very, very good conditions. In addition to that, the Carson City Mint held on to almost all of the coins that they made and hardly circulated any of them. The coins that were hoarded in the Carson City Mint were actually not released until 100 years later in the 1970s when they were sold to collectors at a high profit. Eventually, nearly all the silver was used and it was becoming more difficult to pull the same amount of silver out of the ground by 1904. And that is what stopped the production of the Morgan dollar in 1904. In addition to that, after World War I, the United States actually melted 259 million coins in order to pay off a debt to the UK. To no surprise, shortly after this, the United States had a silver shortage and wanted to continue minting silver dollars again. So they actually restarted production in 1921. And in that year, they reintroduced the Morgan dollar and moved on to the peace dollar. The peace dollar was supposed to present the peace that the world now lived in after World War I, but we all know how that ended up. The peace dollar circulated from 1921 until 1928, and after a short break again in 1934 and 1935. These silver dollars have always had 371 and a quarter grains of silver. That's never changed, even to today's modern dollars. These commemorative silver dollars that I'm showing you here are the 90% silver to the same exact specifications as the Morgan dollars. If you do plan to collect these commemorative silver dollars, make sure that you choose ones that come in the full box and COA. And of course, there are the even more modern restrikes of the Morgan and Peace dollars that have started coming out. These are actually made in 3/9 fine silver, and since they're the same dimensions but more dense, they do contain a little bit more silver. A regular silver dollar of 90% silver will contain 0.77344 ounces. These here that are made of pure silver are actually 0.859 ounces. So a little bit under a tenth of an ounce of silver more. But that less than tenth of an ounce of silver makes a very significant difference. This one right here is the business strike, and there are proof and reverse proof examples. These ones too are highly collectible if they have the box and COA. Without these pieces that come along with it, it is basically a generic round. So before you go spending the premium on a coin like this, make sure you're getting everything that it came with. Another quick thought before I end this video or do my final recap. I find it very interesting that the silver dollars were more silver than what $1 would equivalent to. $1, if made up in half dollars or quarters or dimes, would be 25 grams. Oh, I always forget to show my typeset book here. But here, take a look. I have a piece dollar and a Morgan dollar here as well. So a dollar in 90% silver, when we're looking at junk silver, is 25 grams of 90%, where a Morgan dollar is 26.7 grams. I find it very interesting that this idea of the large silver coin is actually also found in a lot of other countries, or for us, world coins. So later, when I go through my world coins, I'll be talking a little bit more about that, but that is actually something that was very common throughout the whole world. Anyway, here I have $77, which comes out to 59.64 ounces and brings my running total to 522.25 ounces. Wow, I almost forgot to show you the Carson City that I've been having displayed in the back for the past few weeks. This here is an 1884 from Carson City. It is in what's called a GSA holder, which is actually one that was taken from that hoard from Carson City and put into these slabs and sold to collectors. So yes, I did pay a significant premium for this coin specifically, but all of my other ones I paid only a few dollars over spot. So whether you are collecting high premium coins like this, or you're collecting coins hardly over spot, just remember, every ounce adds up. So no matter how small, just keep stacking.